Welcome to another presentation and part of the SR Snodgrass podcast. So today we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, AI, and we're going to be talking about it because we hear all about it nowadays. Our goal at Snodgrass is always to help our clients, to help them be more profitable while also helping them to assess risk and be safe. So Jeremy, you're our resident expert today to help guide us through this conversation. So I'm curious first if you could give us a brief overview as, I know that you're a principal in the IT group, the information technology group, but can you tell us a little bit about what your group does and why we even have an IT group here at Snodgrass?
Sure. Yeah, I am the principal of the IT group, and we've been in business for 77 years. 70, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you're the HR person, but the IT group formed 25 years ago as we saw technology being used more and more at our clients. And in the banking industry, at least, which is a big part of what we do, their banks are regulated to have audits and penetration tests and things like that. So to be the full service firm that we wanted to be, they formed an IT group to service the needs of our clients, not just in the banking industry, but outside of banking, because technology is such a large part of how companies operate these days. So, we try to be full service. We do IT audits. If you're regulated to have an information technology audit, we can do that for you. We have SEC clients that require, their key controls to be tested, which falls into the IT realm as well. Obviously, we do attack and penetration testing, which is kind of, looking at the cybersecurity and how well you're ready to defend against cybersecurity attacks. So, artificial intelligence is one of those things we get asked about a lot. So it is something that we've been keeping up with, and that's our topic for the day. But if there's any interest in any of the other services, that's we can do another podcast on those.
That sounds great then. So as you mentioned, AI, artificial intelligence, that's what we're starting with today, or the topic for today. And the thing about AI is that it's not new.
Correct. Yep.
We hear a lot more about it now, but kind of give us a little bit, maybe not a full background of AI, just a podcast here, but a little bit more information about how it's been around.
Yeah, and I like that you stated, it's not new. Artificial intelligence has been around a lot, and we see that often in the IT industry. Something that's been around for 20, 25 years, all of a sudden people start talking about it. Some little new innovation comes out that just makes everybody start to use it, or everybody start to talk about it. And a good analogy to that, not artificial intelligence, but when you think of how popular now virtual reality systems are, I know my former neighbor's kid just got one of the Oculus sets. There was a movie 25 years ago called The Lawnmower Man, and it was about artificial intelligence and using artificial intelligence to kind of improve the brain waves of, special needs people and things like that. And if you can find that movie today, because, I'm dating myself a little bit, but you go back and you watch that movie, it's a 25-year-old movie at least, the headsets that they used in that movie are exactly like the Oculus, headsets that you can go to Walmart or Best Buy or wherever and buy those today. And so that's another thing that, virtual reality has been around, for a long time. And now all of a sudden, they're making it more common and people can buy it and people can use it for gaming and people can use it for exercise and things like that. So those little innovations that come out that make the technology, in this case, more affordable to the common user, it's the same technology we were using 25 years ago because they put current technology in that movie back then. So I always get a kick when I watch that movie, and not that I watch it often, but just that it's like, wow, those are the same headsets that you can go and buy today, and this is an old movie. So artificial intelligence is the same thing. They've been working on artificial intelligence for a long time. It's gaining popularity. Obviously, at this point, we're hearing a lot about it in the news, but it's not a new technology. So.
It sounds like it's more accessible then. It's more readily accessible to a lot of people. And because it's not just at the developing stages with all of it, it's been made available. Why are we hearing so much more about it nowadays then?
Well, I'm glad you asked. So, previously up until some of the new iterations of artificial intelligence, ChatGPT and things like that, artificial intelligence is one of those, if you wanted to work on it, you had to go to a 4-year college or more to kind of learn a programming language because you couldn't just talk to the computer in English, or in Japanese or whatever language you speak, and have it do what you wanted. The reason we're seeing it blow up now and we're hearing so much about it now is when ChatGPT came out, they made it to where you can just literally talk to it in English and say, here's what I'm trying to do, and it will do the work for you. So you don't have to have a programming language now. So as you mentioned, a minute or two ago, it's becoming so accessible to everybody because it doesn't have to be the people with a 4-year college degree in computer engineering that can teach this machine how to do what you want it to do. And I think that's why we're hearing a lot about it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of other artificial intelligence out there, which maybe we can touch on later, that we're not hearing a lot about that I really wish we were. And again, we can maybe get into that later in the presentation, but we're hearing a ton about the ChatGPTs and things because it makes it easy for the layman to use them. But we're not hearing about some of the other artificial intelligence out there that have a lot of benefits.
So I am going to ask you about those other types of AI that we should be hearing and talking more about in just a second. But I feel like you set us up for this next question then. Like, should we all be using ChatGPT in all aspects of our life?
Yeah, so that's a hard question for me to answer. We have a wide variety of clients in different industries. And even if you just want to specify one of our industries, nonprofits or the financial industry, it's hard for me to say, should your company be using this? It really comes down to a question of risk appetite. The companies that want to start delving into artificial intelligence really need to sit down as a management body or a board, and you need to weigh the risks versus the benefit, just like anything else. So again, it becomes a risk appetite, and most companies have kind of a risk appetite statement, or they have a strategic plan that kind of talks about what their risk appetite is. So you can tell I'm kind of leading into the fact that there are risks with using artificial intelligence, and you have to weigh the benefits versus the risk to determine whether you want to use it or not. And sometimes it even comes down to, yes, we want to use it. It's what do you want to use it for? Because again, that risk appetite, and you're putting information out there that's vulnerable to attacks or vulnerable to sniffing or vulnerable to being compromised. And you really have to sit down and say, okay, well, if we're using it, what are we using it for and how far are we willing to go? And then monitor the technology as it improves and as it ages. And maybe at that point, okay, well, they've made a lot of improvements on the security side, or they've made a lot of improvements on this and that maybe then your risk appetite over the years will change. So again, hard answer. Sorry for the long answer, but that's not an easy answer.
It was a consulting type of answer.
Yes.
So you had mentioned just a few moments ago about there are types of AI that are out there that we don't hear much about. Could you talk a little bit about what those types are and how they can be used in businesses today?
Absolutely. When we do penetration tests or audits, we look at two areas of technology that almost every single company out there has. If you don't have it, you're really putting yourself at risk if you don't have anything at all. That's the area of antivirus and the area of firewalls. So you're not going to do a penetration test or even an IT audit without looking at those two areas. And over the years, artificial intelligence has really gotten to the point where we're telling our clients now, if you're not using artificial intelligence in those two areas, your company is at a higher risk than if you were. So unfortunately, when you talk about the ChatGPTs and things like that, I would say right now you're putting yourself at more risk by using them than not. But the two areas, antivirus and firewalls, I really feel like clients are putting themselves at more risk by not using those technologies. And I can expand if you want on how that works.
I'm curious to hear more about that, especially for someone who doesn't have an IT background necessarily. I mean, we all use IT items on a regular basis, but how would you describe the benefits of using it or how it works to somebody that doesn't have that deep technical knowledge?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with antivirus. Antivirus has been around since I was in college, which was a long time ago at this point, so we won't go there. But back then, even my computer had antivirus. And even up until 5 to 10 years ago, it was always the same type of technology. It was what we called a signature-based antivirus program. So every single hour or every single day or however often you set it, the program would go out and it would get these signatures for known viruses. And some of the programs, it just looked at what's called the header, so the top information of that virus. And some of them went, so many lines deep into the code and looked at it. And what it was doing was if a virus came into your network or into your computer and it matched one of those signatures, it would say, nope, you're not allowed. You match my signature, I'm going to block you. And again, some were better than others because some just looked at that little header information, the top 10 lines or whatever the header was. Some of them went a little bit deeper. But again, if it matched that signature, it would block it. The problem was, and still is with those kind of programs, is, take just the number 0. In coding language, there's 5 or 6 common ways to put a number 0. You can do it 0. You can do what's called a no-op, which means don't do an operation. All different kinds of ways to represent a 0. So if you have a 0 in that header for a signature-based program and you change it from a 0 to a no-op, which is, again, another programming term for 0, all of a sudden now it doesn't match that signature anymore because it's looking for a 0 and you put a no-op. So then that virus gets through. And that's been a large problem for 20 years with, we got these signatures, but it's so easy for an attacker to just change that header a little bit and it gets past our signature and it doesn't match. So move forward now to where artificial intelligence is coming in, and for probably at least 5, if not more years, they have come up with some very intelligent, and I won't name brands because I don't want you to think I'm getting kickbacks, but some very intelligent antivirus programs. They don't look at signatures. They don't go out and download signatures. You plop it on your network, on your endpoints, and it learns what is, quote unquote, normal for your business. It says, okay, I'm used to seeing this traffic at this time of the day. I'm used to seeing this protocol being used. I'm used to seeing this program doing stuff. It's not stopping a virus from coming in. That's the education piece, which we've talked about hundreds of times. You're still going to have your users clicking on that link that's going to get that virus. It's going to get that spyware. It's going to get that ransomware. But instead of it just saying, does it match my signature, it's learning what's normal for your environment. And the minute that they click on that and get that virus or that ransomware, it says, wait a minute, something's happening on this machine that's not normal. And it can automatically block the system. It can quarantine the system. It can do that intelligent stuff that a person used to have to do. Instead of looking at a report once a week and saying, oh, I think this machine has a virus, it literally does the work for you because it knows something's not normal for your network. Ransomware is a huge concern right now. We could do a whole podcast on ransomware, but these artificial intelligence antivirus solutions will look and it will say, this computer just encrypted 20 files in the last 3 seconds. That's ransomware, and it can block it. And now the ransomware is stuck on that machine and it can't spread out throughout your whole network. So now instead of re-imaging your entire network from backup, you're re-imaging one machine. And your risk as to what might have been compromised is limited to just what data was on that one machine.
So let's kind of break some of that down a little bit. So one of the key things that I heard you say is that it doesn't necessarily prohibit and prevent you from getting the actual ransomware or the virus or whatever it may be, but it helps stop the spread then.
Correct, yeah. And the second technology, the firewalls, is doing more of the making sure you don't get it to begin with. So when we talk about that as an example, we'll maybe talk about that as a technology that keeps you from getting that bad stuff to begin with. So when we talk about controls, we talk about preventative controls, detective controls, and reactionary controls. The antivirus is more detecting and reacting, whereas the firewall is more the preventing. So
one of the key things I heard you say too is that we still have to ensure that the education happens for each of the employees.
Absolutely.
To ensure that, and I think what I'm hearing overall too is that each line of the defense is really important and they all have to work together as opposed to kind of it's only this or this is going to be the saving grace overall. This is what's going to prohibit and prevent anything from bad from happening for your company. That's not the case. It's just one of the steps in the many.
Right. Anytime we're doing an audit or a penetration test, we promote a layered security approach. So again, there are different layers. We look at 7. Different people break them down different ways. We break it down into 7 layers of security. So, you've kind of got a logical security side, which is kind of the antivirus and things like that. But you've also got the education side. We call that the policy side because it's policies and procedures and training and things like that. Unfortunately, and you could listen to 20 IT experts, they're all 20 are going to tell you the weakest link is the humans. The weakest link is the person clicking on that hyperlink, opening that attachment, giving out their multi-factor code over the phone and not realizing they shouldn't have to. Humans tend to be the weakest link. You can make the computers as secure as you want, but when you have an end user that's having a bad day and they're not reading the email and looking at where the link's taking them and they click that link, you're hoping then at that point the other 6 layers block something bad from happening, because unfortunately, when we do penetration testing, we send out phishing emails, very hard pressed to have a company just not have a couple of failures every time that we send those out.
So Jeremy, if you're advising a client, regardless of the industry that they're in, what would you tell them that they need to be using AI for and how to use it and what they need to not use regarding AI?
Yeah, sure. So I would absolutely tell them, regardless of industry, again, they should be using the artificial intelligence-based antivirus and firewalls, those ones that are learning what's normal, blocking what's not normal. When we get into the ChatGPTs and things like that, again, that's a risk appetite question. You got to realize they're getting their answers from the internet or from the cloud. So I really think they need to kind of weigh the risks and weigh what data they want to put out there to have those kind of artificial intelligence programs use. Those are the kind that right now I would say the risk is outweighing the need, but if you really want to be more efficient and you want to save time, sure, go ahead and use them. But again, you really got to understand the risks. Whereas the first two that I mentioned, I think the benefits far outweigh the risk, and there are very few cons on the antivirus and the firewall versus risks by implementing those as opposed to the older technologies.
That's interesting to hear, and especially, about how the risks can be, including that things go out to the cloud. Are you seeing clients having their own other type of, that they're designing or having designed for them, any sort of AI that's specific to just their company?
No, we have a lot of institutions that kind of outsource a lot of their technology to, third-party providers. So we don't have any clients right now that are kind of, having programmers develop their own artificial intelligence. But again, a lot of our clients kind of use the same vendors, if you will, and we do have vendors who are investing pretty heavily into kind of how can we use AI to make our processes more efficient or to help our security and things like that. So because of the commonality of the vendors that a lot of our clients use, we are certainly seeing the vendors that they're using. We just don't have a lot of clients that kind of have in-house programming, and if they do, it's such a new technology, they don't have the expertise in-house to say, let's just start designing our own AI.
So Jeremy, we've talked about 3 different types of AI. We've talked about the antivirus, we've talked about firewalls, and also ChatGPT or any of those open source platforms in general. Kind of to sum up, how would you describe those? What are the necessities? Which ones do we need to be a little more cautious of?
Yes, I think our firm as a whole feels the antivirus and the firewalls are a necessity at this point. As I mentioned earlier, there's more risk to not using them than there is to using them. They are the better technology at this point. You should absolutely be using those. The ChatGPTs, those are kind of one I can see a use for certain departments, but then others, it's just to me too risky at this point.
Okay, well, thanks for giving that to us in a very concise way then. I'm so really curious to hear about what you think is next in terms of AI. What should we expect in our lives to see coming up?
Yes, I mean, we're already to the point there are some artificial intelligence that we talked about today that you should be using, and we obviously touched on some that we don't feel you should be using quite yet, or at least use them in a limited capacity. So I think that the artificial intelligence is going to get there. I think it could, really lower overhead costs and things like that. I just think right now we're at a stage where we need to monitor it, and we need to kind of really make some hard decisions on what we want to use it for, just because there is so much risk with where that data is going to get your answers and where that data is going to have the work done. So my personal take is I think what's next is we're going to see the security on those types of programs improve. We're going to see the uses for those get to be more and more common. I just think right now we're in a stage where we just need to monitor it and figure out when is the time to jump in with both feet, and I just don't think we're there yet.
Okay, well, that's really interesting to hear. Now, if someone wants to learn more about, the different types of antivirus, the firewalls, different things like that, how can they find you? What do you provide to clients in terms of that, like newsletters, other things?
Yeah, if you go to our website, there's a place you can sign up for, all sorts of different newsletters, but we do an IT newsletter at least quarterly. We've started to send out kind of alerts when there's major types of attacks coming out more often than quarterly. We can get it out in a day or two. So I would absolutely sign up for those unless you're someone that just doesn't want to get, emails every now and then. You can also email me or any of my staff directly. Our email addresses are out there on the website. You can just shoot us an email, and we're pretty quick to respond.
And do you also offer like a consulting project if someone needs some additional information or guidance through this too?
Yeah. We're not the type of firm who charges for every email and every phone call, but if it gets to where it's like, well, that's going to be a 20-hour project, we can certainly, set up a small engagement where we can kind of come out for a day or two and, get you through the bulk of what you need to do. So we don't charge for every email and phone call, but at the point I get an email where it's like, well, that's a 20-hour answer, that's going to lead to an engagement, and we can, kind of help you out there.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing so much information with us today. Great to have you back on the podcast. Looking forward to talking with you again. And just want to direct everybody to our website at www.srsnodgrass.com to learn more. For those of you who have been joining our podcast, thanks again for tuning in. As a reminder, we have offices in Pennsylvania, both in the Philadelphia area as well as the Pittsburgh area. We also have an office in West Virginia and in Ohio. However, we do service clients regularly throughout the United States. For more information, you can go to our website, www.srsnodgrass.com, to learn more, and I encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn as well.